My name is Candace. I am the CEO and founder of Parent Promise 513, and you have now just entered the Purpose Parent Podcast. During this podcast, we will talk all things mental health. We will also talk about single parenthood. We will also talk about just all things parenting. So if you've gotten here, you're here for a reason, and I hope that you're ready to grow. Today, we have one of my favorite people. This person really inspires me in this field and in this work. Also, this person has actually helped me develop on my professional level and on skills. And so I want to introduce to you all Dr. Shauna Wallace. She's going to give a little background of herself. And so go right in, Shauna.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Candace, for allowing me to be a guest on Parent Promises podcast. I greatly appreciate the opportunity and honor to be here today. So a little bit about me. I obtained my doctorate degree in social work from Simmons University, my master's from University of Cincinnati, and my bachelor's from Queen's University of Charlotte. I have done various positions and roles and stuff. I am the owner of 3E Consulting and Training Solutions, where I engage, educate, and empower those that I come in contact with, especially individuals, families, and professionals from various services, such as parent coordination, mediation, supervised visits, as well as trainings for professionals, trauma-informed care, restorative practice, CPR, and first aid. I am also now the founder of 3E Affinity Incorporated, which is fairly new, established in February of 2023. So we're excited about that. Again, a little bit about me. I have worked in the medical field. I've worked in the school setting. I've been a substitute teacher before. My background, my profession, my passion is trauma and adolescence. That's always my go-to. And I am just truly excited to be here to provide any, education that I can to help those that we serve.
Yeah, so let's get right into it. Today is trauma talk. And so, as you heard, Dr. Wallace specializes in trauma. And so, we have a few questions for her. And I'll tell you how I came up. The first question I want to start with, Dr. Wallace, is when you are dealing with mental health and you're dealing with, undiagnosed trauma or diagnosed trauma, what happens when I don't feel better?
So yeah, great question, Candace. So what does that really look like, right? So part of that is knowing who we are as individuals, because nobody knows us like we know ourselves. And so at some point, we've all experienced some type of, lack of motivation, some type of physical or mental or even spiritual exhaustion. So the question is that you need to ask yourself is like, how much of this is truly impacting my daily function, right? Is it impacting my ability to enjoy life, work, or be present with your loved ones or even families? If it's severely impacting those things, then it may be time to seek help, right? And that can be from a mental health professional, that can be from your PCP. If you are a religious or spiritual person, that can be from your higher being, your pastor, wherever you need to seek help. And if those things are not working, even if you're one of those individuals that need vacation, just to kind of reset yourself, if those things are not working, then it may be a little bit deeper than that. And again, that's where you have to decide, like, is it severe enough to where I need to go and actually talk to a mental health profession? Or do I need to go and be inpatient for a little bit to get myself stable? And there's no judgment against that, right? Because sometimes I think mental health has this negative stigma towards it. And so it's okay to not be okay. But what you do with that is going to make the difference in how you progress and continue on your path and your mental wellness in life.
How do you know, if you're dealing with trauma or you're experiencing mental health issues?
Yeah, so that is difficult because trauma is experienced differently from from everybody to person. So for instance, Candace, you and I can be in the same situation and you walk away and you feel like you was not traumatized from that situation. However, based on my experiences, my history, and how I internalized that, that could have been a very traumatic experience for me, right?
Mhm.
So it's different. So when we talk about trauma, it's important to recognize that it's not just a physical injury. It can be psychological. Essentially, it can be an emotional response to a stressful event or a series of them, such as like natural disaster, some type of physical, sexual, emotional abuse, loss of loved ones, a war, multiple car accidents. I had the experience. I swear I have PTSD from all the car accidents I have. So that's very traumatic for me.
Mhm.
Um, and some of these symptoms can be flashbacks, nightmares, having depression, anxiety, having some guilt. So it is possible that you could be dealing with trauma on some level.
The next question that I have is about being patient. And so, working in the field as like either like a case manager or like a family resource specialist or as a behavior support, I have come across people who automatically feel like we're coming in, like we're coming to fix, we're coming to do it like right away, and it's gonna happen overnight. And so, when I think about the phrase of like being patient, the question I have is like, how long does mental health take, or how patient do I have to be to heal my trauma?
Mental health can take a lifetime,
Mm,
depending on who it is, the severity of it, and what type of mental health issue you're working with. Um, Patience is a virtue. Like you have to be patient with yourself. You have to give yourself that grace because mental health is not just psychological, it's also emotional and
mhm,
social being, right? So it's about how we think, how we act, and how we feel. So if you are having psychological or behavioral disturbances or disruptions at different severity levels, then you could be suffering from mental health
mhm,
issues, right? And so what does that really look like? I think people, um, and I can relate to this because this is what I consider myself all the time is IG, that instant gratification. I want to walk in somewhere, tell people what my problem is, and they have this magical wand to just fix it, just to get rid of it. And
mhm,
I think that's where people have this misconception of what the expectation should be, right?
mhm,
So like you do a lot of work with parents and children. And so let's think about that. So when a parent comes to you and it's like, oh well, my child needs help with this, or I need help with parenting my child because they acting this way and I just don't know what to do. And then you work with them, you give this all the suggestions and feedback, and then they don't go and implement it, and they were like, but Candace, but it didn't work. Like I'm struggling, it's not working. And you're like, okay, but did you do the work? Like it takes time. It's a process. It's not going to change overnight because some of these behaviors are learned. So mental health is the same way. Like it's a process. It's not going to just up and disappear. Um, as if, it's just a random thing. It doesn't work that way. So again, like just giving yourself grace and notice the process and that it's going to take time, but you also have to do the work.
yes, what you just said, giving yourself grace and actually doing the work is definitely impacting on the turnaround time. Yes, what you just said, giving yourself grace and actually doing the work is definitely impacting on the turnaround time. And so the next question is definitely something that I personally, can reflect with. And so the next question says, what happens if I'm breaking generational mental health or mental health issues and it feels awkward or out of place?
Um, yeah, generational mental health. um,
Or
so
generational curses. Like
yeah, yeah,
those
yeah,
two kind of go hand in hand.
yeah. So to me it's like, okay, so you have a family and they suffer from mental health, like, and that's generational, right? Whether
Mhm,
it's mom, brother, sister, whoever, aunties, great grandmother, whatever the situation may be, and they're dealing with anxiety and depression. Some of this can be environmental, some of this can be genetics, right? And so it's not a thing of like, how do I really get rid of this? It's like, what can I do different? How can I minimize what's happening? And so if mental health is genetic or it can result from genetics and environmental components, you have to simply think about, I'm going to do something different. What is that going to look like? Is that going to be for once in my family, we're going to go get treatment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's a change, right? That's beginning to break that generational mental health. So, like when we talk about racial trauma, that can be passed down from generation because it impacts how our body reads the DNA. Um, but then I think about being a mom, like my trauma and the trauma I was passing down to my kids, right, as I was pregnant. Because think about like the stress that we endure during our pregnancy. How much is that is impacting our babies? Like that's that's in us, our fetuses, and what does that look like? Because if I suffer from high levels of stress, or anybody suffers from high level of stress, the outcome of that child can be autism,
Mm-hmm.
ADHD, schizophrenia, right? And some of the non-biological ways can be like that codependency, unhealthy attachment styles, parental disassociation, and like even family events that has happened over generational time. So to begin breaking that down, you have to begin taking care of yourself, your own mental, physical, social, emotional, spiritual well being. You have to limit the stress in your life, be aware of your own environment. So, even as a parent, you don't necessarily want to do the exact same thing that your parent did you. So, if you was raised in a household of people that were constantly yelling, guess what you're going to do if you start yelling to your children? You are causing them emotional trauma, which is impacting them, which again is going to impact their children if they have children because it's a learned behavior. So it's starting with you and doing something different and figure out what can I change. But be realistic about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want to set yourself up for fame like, oh, I can't do this because you didn't have those realistic expectations to begin with. So and you have to be intentional,
There it is.
right? In order to be that change agent, you have to be intentional and you have to stick with it. It's about being intentional and it's about being consistent.
How do I remain grounded or humble when I'm facing mental health challenges?
Being grounded, being humble. It's a little it's different, but those are like powerful things, powerful meanings, right? And so you have to almost let go of your own importance, right? When you talk about being humble, it's not having this grandiose attitude. You have to be able to connect with your own self and having that self awareness. And a lot of times people talk about self care. There's a lot of talk about self care. You hear a lot of professionals talk about that. You hear a lot of teachers in different places. Like it's almost like a buzzword. Oh, self care, self care. For me, I consider it care practices, but when it comes to mind, you think about manis, petties. Some people think about taking a bath. Um, but it's so much deeper into that. It's like you have to feed your brain. You have to feed your soul. Um, and so it's taking a holistic approach, whether that's including like exercise, like getting sleep, drinking water. Guys, I'm gonna be honest, like I struggle with that. I'm one of those individuals I need to drink water. So I am preaching to y'all about that, but I'm a work in progress. Um, and eating healthy. So in grounding yourself, you have to be aware of what your body is experiencing, right? So doing those body scans, like, okay, if something's happening to me, where is it happening at? Where can I feel that at? Where can I check in at? And then part of that being grounded and humble is having the ability to reach out. Don't be ashamed of reaching out if you need help. It's okay. If you just need somebody just to talk to, or if you just need to be like, I'm not okay in this moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Be transparent enough to do something about that and not be high and mighty or feel like you're too good to be struggling. Because we've all struggled, whether we want to admit it or not, whether we want to deal with it, we've all struggled on some level. So
Right.
humble yourself enough to reach out, like reach out to somebody before it gets too bad and to that point. Um, and they have like different, apps that you can use to combat. My favorite one that I know about, just FYI for y'all Apple people, I'm not an Apple person, Android all the way through and through. But for y'all Apple people, they have this app called Finch, and it's like a self-care widget pet. And so it talks to you and it gives you feedback and suggestions on, like, you can set up however you want, but it includes like positive affirmations, like it gives you reminders on how to take care of yourself. However you set that up. And the good thing about it is, if you fail to take care of it, it does not die on you. So it's a positive. So you don't have to feel like you screwed up or you're screwing up your life. It just keeps pushing you and motivating you into and trying to figure out how it can best serve you so you can best serve yourself. So I think that's a great tool to use when people are just getting in the habit of using care practices and trying to be humble and grounded in that process, to have those constant reminders and that additional support.
Then, for Android users, it's the Calm app, right?
Come is Apple too.
Oh, my bad.
We could do some research to figure out, some stuff for Android folks. I mean, they have the mindfulness app and stuff too, but I think it's important to find something that's gonna force you to actually engage and interact with it. Because again, like, with self-care practice, people think it gotta be hours on end. And it could just be a quick 5 minutes, like, of doing something that's gonna center you.
And we have a self care journal that's online as well. On Parent Promise, we have a youth one and an adult one, and we'll add those in the show notes too. So there was a TikTok going around, and they were talking about this study that had just got done. I'll find it and kind of list it in the show notes. But they were talking about how depression shows up differently in Black women. And so before we answer this question, we're going to start off by saying we do not discriminate by age, race, color, hair, whatever you want to do. We don't discriminate here. We love all people. And so, Dr. Wallace, I want you to kind of, with your experience doing therapy and, working in the field and working with different populations, do you see depression showing up differently in women of color, Black women? What's kind of your perspective on that?
Yeah, so it does. And a lot of times that can really look like, your sleep disturbances, your self-criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Um Black women really tend to be self-critical of one another and very irritable um than their counterparts. And so, but then you also have to think about, why is this the case, right? Why is it showing up differently? So when we talk about Black women, you got to think about it, right? Our intersectional identities. For one, we're Black, so we already dealing with racism every single day. Like, it's going to show up in every part of our life, whether it's in a microaggression form. And then
Mm-hmm.
on top of that, we are females in a white dominant society, right? And so we have these things that are already working against us outside of our home, outside of our family, outside of our culture, and Black women being against Black women. Like, oh, well, you're too dark. Oh, well, you think you're cute because you have good hair, or whatever the situation may be. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
have layers and layers of things that we're constantly dealing with on the daily basis. And so it does look different. And you have to be your best advocate when you go to your doctor trying to seek help, or your mental health professional. Because what they're taught in school, for instance, I'm gonna use a medical situation. What they're taught in school is Black people's skin is thicker than white, or Black people can have a higher pain tolerance than
Mm-hmm.
their white counterparts. And so they don't necessarily want to give you certain medication, or they don't want to give you a certain dosage because of that, right? And
Right.
so you don't necessarily get the best medical treatment possible. Um, which is why we have so many issues, and which is why we have so many Black babies that are dying, because the mortality rate when it comes to healthcare access and quality of treatment is totally different. So so for depression, for mental health, it is different. It's greater, but we don't also admit to that, and we take a lot of that, people that are fatigued or irritable. They be like, oh, because they just got a lot of stuff going on in their life, right? Or because we're doing too many things. And so we begin to make excuses for that when in reality, it really is a mental health issue
Mm-hmm.
that is going on. But we don't necessarily see that on that level because we are taught that we are strong. We are
Right.
taught that we are
Uh-huh.
resilient and all these other things. And so it's like almost like we don't deserve to get help. We don't deserve, like, my stuff cannot be, a mental health issue. It cannot be anxiety. It cannot be depression because I was taught this. I was told this about who I am as a Black female. And so beginning to dismantle some of these beliefs, some of these myths that have been told to us, and really get down to the gritty nitty and begin doing something different. And part of it is coming together, like as Black women, right, and rebuilding one another
Mm-hmm.
and providing these groups, these supports, these circles to support one another, right? To hear one another out because we all deserve to be heard. We all have a voice, and it's very meaningful and powerful. And so just coming together to do something different, to be better.
The next time that you just get a few moments to yourself, I want you to ask yourself, who am I? And just kind of sit with that, meditate with it and like truly answer it, like, who am I?
Oh, yes, let me clarify that. So the question, who am I? Do not ask yourself who you are in relates to your roles, your education. So for
Mm,
example, when you ask yourself, who am I? Don't say, oh, I'm a mother. Oh, I'm a teacher. Oh, I'm a coach.
mm-hmm.
Or any of that type of stuff, right? Really dig deep and explore like who you are as an individual outside of your roles, outside of your degree, outside of your experience.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you at the core? And it's okay if you don't know, but that means you need to take time to get to know you, to explore you, your likes, your dislikes. You might find things about yourself that you don't even like, and that's okay because you have the willpower to change that if you don't like something.
Agreed.
Like, you have control over that.
Go do that inner work because it definitely
Yep.
matters. Go do that inner work. Tell us how we can get in touch with you, how we can support you, your social medias. Just give us how we can reach you.
Yeah, so you can reach me at Shauna at consult-3e.com, and that's SHAUNA consult hyphen, that's the number three, the letter E.com. Telephone number is 513-813-1908. For my sorors out there, y'all already know that 1908. Um, and I'm getting there on social media. I'm a work in progress. So my hashtag is gonna be Graceful Shauna on social media when I get there. So it's gonna be coming soon. Um, Again, and you also start seeing things about 3E Affinity Incorporated Inc., which I'm excited about, which is the nonprofit. So when you start seeing that come out, please, some support your community healing and activities and workshops. So yeah.
So now that you've had a chance to listen in, I hope that this helped you grow. I hope that you learned some things that you can apply into real life. I hope that you come back for more and stay tuned for our next special guest. And as always, Parent Promise slogan, positive parenting only.